Hi, I'm Charles Hatley, and this is Rebecca Malone with Malone Hatley PC, where we're truly your partner in divorce. And today we wanted to answer some questions that we frequently get about who gets the house during a divorce in Loudoun County, Virginia. So, one of the biggest questions we get is how is a house divided in Loudoun County, Rebecca?
Sure. So a lot of it is going to depend on who holds the title, who's on the mortgage, and then the court has to make a determination of who's been making what sort of contributions during the marriage. But in general, the court cannot award property to someone who doesn't have some sort of the name on the title, right? You have to be on the title of the property. Otherwise, you're maybe just entitled to a payment from the value as opposed to getting ownership of the property itself.
So, during a divorce process, what you're saying is generally during a divorce process, what we see is the courts will just order the house be sold, and then the parties will divide the equity, right? So if there's $100,000 in equity, the house was purchased during the marriage, the court will order that each party gets $50,000. What you're talking about is if somebody says, I want to keep the house, you would have to have some sort of ownership interest prior to the divorce in order for the court to award the keeping of the house.
Correct.
Now, what if there's minor children? Does the court care about if there's minor children and one parent gets primary or physical custody? Do they get, sort of some sort of special treatment for keeping the house?
Not necessarily special treatment, but it is also a consideration. If we're going to force the parties out of the marital home and everybody has to go and find a new place to live, what does that mean for the children? Are we removing them from their school district? Are we taking them away from other extended family members, from their regular activities, from any sort of normalcy, right, that we're trying to preserve for the children? So if it's financially possible, the court will allow some opportunity for one of the parties to keep the house. So, for example, if you have a jointly titled house and the wife says, I really want to keep this property, I want to keep my kids in the same school, so on and so forth, the court will give an opportunity for that. But the wife is going to have to financially be able to afford to do that. And what that means a lot of the time is she's going to have to refinance the property into her separate name. She's going to have to afford those monthly mortgage payments going forward. And she's going to have to give the husband his share of what the proceeds would have been had they sold the house at that time. So there's a lot of steps that go into keeping the house, but it's certainly possible. And that is a major consideration for the court when we have children involved.
And what we're talking about right now is court orders. However, the parties can come to an agreement and do almost anything they want. So, by agreement, even if your name's not on the house, even if your name's not on the mortgage, the other side could say, look, I'm going to let you keep the house and you're going to buy me out by agreement. As we're seeing right now in Loudoun County, the prices of houses have increased tremendously. And a lot of people are really locked in at these very preferable interest rates. So we're seeing a lot of people that are talking about, hey, you go ahead and live in the house. The refinance would make you subject to a higher interest rate. So I'm going to let you keep living in the house. And we'll both stay joint owners of the house and we'll do a refinance in 5 years, or we'll sell the house in 5 or 6 years when the kids graduate from high school or something to that nature. Are there concerns with capital gains tax in that idea, and how do you avoid that?
Yeah. So if you have a spouse that moves out and then we're waiting until some point in the future to sell the property, they can absolutely end up paying a good chunk in capital gains taxes because they weren't living in the house during that time period, and that's what makes the difference. In a situation like that, where you're trying to preserve maybe a great mortgage rate, or maybe someone has a credit problem or something like that, you first need to talk to a mortgage professional and figure out exactly what all the options are. There are some opportunities to actually assume a mortgage, which is different from a refinance. You're basically
Hmm.
keeping the same exact terms and everything in place, but allowing one person to stay on and just removing the other one. Sometimes a refinance can be done with some different conditions, right? Maybe you bring in a cosigner, maybe you do something to adjust your credit, you fix up a credit problem, you make some sort of adjustment on income or something along those lines, and that way you can qualify for the refinance more quickly. We don't necessarily want to be waiting 5 years to engage in a transaction when we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the interest rates are going to look like. We don't know what the market's going to look like, what the property values, everything else. So you're really leaving a lot to the unknown when you push something out that far in the future.
Yeah, you can divide a house a lot of different ways, especially, in Loudoun County where the house prices have really ballooned. If you or someone is going through divorce and you're looking for information like this, give us a call and see the difference that Malone Hatley PC as your partner through the divorce process can make for you.